All right, yo, peace, peace. This presentation is for people people who would like to have another perspective or who are currently studying to understand what the pyramid texts are. All right, so this is some information that I've gathered related to the pyramid texts. Um, and I'm gonna just get right into it. This is an expanding presentation. This is something that I'm working on and that I look to perfect, get better at, understand more about. So, this part of the presentation will most likely stay the same, but of course, things will be updated, upgraded as more information becomes available. All right, so this is discussing the pyramid text of Unas, right? Now, in this discussing, I'm going to be talking here about the temple and its layout. So, on this one, I should definitely add a design here. But it's located on the eastern side of the pyramid, aligned with the rising sun. That's where the temple's at, right? And it has an entrance hall that leads to the inner sanctum. There's an open courtyard for public and restricted rituals. And then there's a statue of the king, right? So it was used for rejuvenation rituals, divine celebrations. It reinforced the king's role as a mediator between the gods and the people. And there's an indication that the priest here was priest of Sekher or Sokar, and this is an indication that it was specialized type of rituals that were going on here, right? And then this temple, the temple suggests, the layout of the temple suggests that it was used during the lifetime of the king, right? And so there's lack. All right, the temple, inside the temple itself, there's no evidence that it was used for burials, right? There was no sarcophagus found inside the temple, and there's all sorts of evidence to suggest that it was a ceremonial place. The Temple of Unas, not the pyramid, but the Temple of Unas was ceremonial, right? Meaning that it was ritualistic, and that there was performing, that they were performing ceremonies and rituals inside this temple here, right? So, and then the rituals that were performed inside the temples were just like the pyramid texts, right? So there's several different you know theories on what it was for, but by and large, it was to support the afterlife journey or the mystical journey of the initiate in through sacred ceremony, right? And it reinforced the initiate's divine role in maintaining Ma'at, or the pharaoh here, the divine's role in maintaining Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, peace, balance, and divine order with the self, right? And then there's also evidence that it functioned as an integrated system of royal deification, right? Then we know that the pyramid temple of Unas, it served as a spiritual and political hub in the Kemetic society, right? And then the other thing that it did was ensure the continuation and the veneration of the king after death. And then it demonstrates the deep connection between architecture, theology, and kingship. Essentially, what it is talking about is that the funerary rituals or the beliefs of the Kemites were intimately connected with the development and the construction of the temple, right? And so it when you're reading the temple, when you're reading the pyramid text, it gives you clearly it gives you an understanding of Kemetic spiritual beliefs. right? So the temple itself functioned as a sacred space and a ceremonial site, right? And it was designed to facilitate the king's metaphysical journey, but has it been a site of ceremonies and rituals, it was designed to facilitate the initiate's metaphysical journey, our metaphysical journey into death and rebirth and resurrection, right? It served as a microcosm of the universe. And at one point, we're going to go ahead and look at the temple, and it embodied cosmic order. Now, said festival. So the said festival is a festival that was done for the king in order to rejuvenate the king, right? Now, some people want to tie the said festival and its 30-year celebration. Some people want to tie the said festival and its 30-year celebration to the cycle of Saturn. You know, that's one argument that people are making because of Saturn's peace, God first. How's all? Hope all is well and blessed. That's one because of Saturn's extremely long cycle that it takes in order to, you know, make its journey. So that's one argument. The interesting thing about the said festival is even though it's celebrated on the 30, the first one is celebrated on the 30, it's done every 3 years after that. So the said festival is more like a rejuvenation festival of the king per se, right? And then that the said festival had all sorts of elaborate, you know, rites and so on and so forth. You know, it's basic cultural celebration of any indigenous people. Now, the said festival inside the pyramid complex. So I really see what I might have to do when I give this is have pictures to accompany these descriptions, right? So the causeways and the reliefs depict the king engaging in the ritual. And then we can see this ritual outlined on the boundary stones. And it's reinforced. What it did was it reinforced the pharaoh's role as both ruler and as a divine entity. But if we look at the temple complex itself, not as just a funerary device, but as an initiatory device, which is the argument that is going to be built up here, not over on this video and in this presentation, but over the course of time. We'll see it as an initiation, you know, rite that people were going through, you know, and that only aligns with the philosophy of the ancients. All of the ancient philosophies was about becoming an initiate and getting initiated into the rites, getting initiated into the rites of Dionysus, dying and being reborn, death and resurrection, death of the egoic self, resurrection into the God self. That was all of the ancient rites back in the day before the emergence of literal Catholic Christianity, right? So inside, there's a lot of decorations in the causeways, and then you'll start to see the king interact with deities. It was religious and ritual for ceremonies. It was guided by the priests. The people, you know, of course, every ceremony is always going to be guided by the priests. So the rituals at the pyramid complex aligned with the Kemetic or Egyptian religious doctrines. It affirmed the concepts of the divine kingship, eternal life, and cosmic order. And then the said festivals were essential to maintaining balance, right? These rituals that the people engaged in was for the health and well-being of the nation, right? So now the pyramid complex and its rituals, it influenced other temple ceremonies. It reflected a connection between religion, rulership, and sacred space. And this is actually really important when you look at how civilizations rise and fall, because when you're creating a nation, you can't just create the nation based upon strength. You know, this is what this is what the study of ancient Kemetic civilization is going to help you understand. You know, it's not just enough for you to have militaristic power in order for you to dominate your will. You also have to be a representative of the cultural values, right? So studying, so looking at and thinking about how this can impact us in the in the present day. Do we reflect the values of the people that we're trying to lead, or the people that we're trying to influence? And then we hear people say that and talk about that to us all the time. We're saying that the young people, the young people can't relate to you. You know what I'm saying? The young people don't relate to what you're talking about because you're not talking about something that's a part of their culture. Well, in the study, when we study ancient Egypt for what it was and what it is, we'll see that there were certain times that there was a rise in the Kemetic culture, a rise in the Kemetic nation, and a fall, and then trying to resurgence, right? But then during that time of resurgence, in between the fall and the resurgence, a lot of different rulers rose up to try to take control and dominance. One of those rulers, this brother named Keti, he rose up in a militaristic way, right? But he was able to dominate and take control over a region militaristically. But because there wasn't a strong cultural foundation with his rule, it didn't last. And so that's a good instruction in relationship to how people can go out and move and organize and gather amongst the people, because you at some point the people are going to have to be able to identify with what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just this is indicative of, you can't be too far ahead of the people if that's what you're trying to do. No doubt, no doubt. All right. So boom, boom, boom. This is kind of I went kind of ham on this. This is 100 and some odd slides. I'm gonna go through each and every one of them so I can try to figure out what to keep and what to get rid of, and then what to adjust. So just sit back and relax with everybody. All right. So the scenes also acted as visual reminders inside the Temple of Unas. This is really just going to be looking at the Temple of Unas and the layout of the pyramid text inside the Temple of Unas, right? So you'll hear me. I'm not going to reference the Temple of Teti the First, or the other temples that were around, or the other pyramid texts. This is strictly the Temple of Unas that I'm going to be talking about. All right. So now the reliefs on the said festival, it depicted the pharaoh's renewal and legitimacy. You got boundary markers. You got always the pharaoh wearing the double crown. The double crown was a symbol of the unity between Upper and Lower Kemet. So the double crown was it had a red exterior with a white crown coming up in the middle. That's what they mean by when they say the double crown, right? And then here it's consistently talking about or showing the interaction of the pharaoh with the gods and the goddesses, right? And it's showing the close relationship of it. Now this is saying the king, but I'm gonna constantly emphasize the initiate's relationship with the divine and its role in maintaining ma'at, cosmic order, internal, independent, individual, balanced order within the self and the community at whole, right? Then you got some common symbols. You got the Ankh, the Jed pillar, the Wasp scepter. I definitely need to have these symbols here in this slide because I realize many brothers and sisters that are going to be watching this are not going to be aware of what the Ankh or the Jed pillar, the Wasp scepter is. When you look up at the temple on the ceilings, you're going to see the stars and the sun, and then that's going to have philosophical, spiritual significance, because in Kemetic theology, when you transcended and became a righteous being in death, you became an Ak, an enlightened one, right? Your goal was on another reference to Ox were Sabas, right? A Saba is another way to spell Saba was with the ideograph of a star, right? Peace, Slim. What's happening? just going through some this presentation here, trying to practice it. So it's kind of long, you know what I'm saying? It's massively long. It ain't kind of long. It's massively long. So sit back, relax, and just hear. This is a take that I'm doing on the pyramid text, so that people can have a better understanding of what they were. You know what I'm saying? And this is one take. You know what I'm saying? This is one take, and trying to understand them better myself, and then just get a gist of what's going on. And then also, to tell you the truth, in my study, what I'm realizing, there was an argument that one person was putting forth that Asar is not found before the fifth dynasty. But that doesn't mean anything, because the pyramid text is really when the ancient Egyptians wrote heavily. And Ptah is not found before the fifth dynasty. So does that mean that Ptah is a foreign deity? Anyway, that's just something, for people that study, for Pan-Africanists, really, that study ancient Egypt, it's just something to help you out in reference to these conversations. Because what you have in the pyramid text is just like what you have in other religions. It's the codification of their spirituality. That's all you have with the oldest religious doctrines is simply the codification. Right. It's just the codification of religious documents, and so when people try to nail you down to ancient Egypt, that really is a disservice, because we need to claim all African creations. All African creations are up our game, and then understanding the best of them to incorporate them into our lives. Anyway, I'm off of task. Let me get back to it. All right. So the artwork, it served as guides for the priests and ritual participants, right? And then it transformed the temple space into a sacred space. Let's look at the temple for a moment. I'm gonna go ahead and let's go ahead and look at the temple. Let me do this for a second here, right? And then let me pull something up on the screen. Let's take a look at the Unas Pyramid 3D, which was pretty dope. I was in there earlier, right? Let's take a gander at it so you all can see what's up. Let me go ahead and share the screen for a second. Hold on a second. All right. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Temple of Unas, right? So this is a 3D representation of our of the ancestral space. Okay. So if some of you anybody here was with me the other day when I did the Medu Neter class, or the hieroglyphs class, you should be able to recognize some of the glyphs here, right? And then maybe another class, I'll just go ahead and break down how you would read these glyphs here on the temple, in the temple walls, right? But this is the temple complex that's outside the pyramid of Unas, right? This right here is the causeway, right? This, you can see that right here clearly. Those are the steps leading into the temple complex, right? And then when you come down, I'm not sure I understand that. Top, boom, boom, boom. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We'll read it. I'll get into it. I got to brush up myself. I'm brushing up on it myself, and there's just certain details I got to learn. But so the interesting thing is, when you look at this causeway, it's all blank, right? And you got to remember, it's all sacred space. Everything is sacred space, symbolizing the initiates are the person's transition from life to the afterlife to rebirth, right? So then we go through here. There's nothing on these walls from top You know what I'm saying? You look around, there's a 3D representation over here. This is what's so great about, history. You know what I'm saying? And this is what's good about our ancestors leaving this in stone. We can look at it. And then when you get into the entrance, this is when you begin to have the text. And so each of these texts means something here, right? And so we're going to break this down later on in my presentation. It's going to talk about how the transitioning from one space of the pyramid temple complex to the next was a whole initiation rites of passage that where you died to the self to become an Asar, to become an Ak, an enlightened being. That's one take on what the pyramid texts are. Right here, hold up. Oh man, I'm tripping out. Hold up. But this is the pyramid text of the Pyramid of Unas. This is the name. Come on, man. It's not going to let me go up any closer. Can I get closer? Well, anyway, I don't know if you all can see that there. Let me see. Will it let me get any closer? It will not. Nope. Anyway, these things here are called shanus. These are the nameplates. Inside this shanu that's the name Unas, right? Or actually, to tell you the truth, is Unis. It's UNIS. It's not UNAS. It's UNIS. This feather here represents an I, and this folded cloth here is an S. This is a biliteral WN. This is a phonetic complement N. This is Unis, so it shouldn't be Unas. Yeah, most definitely. The obelisk, is the Ben, so to speak. So this is the pyramid temple. Now, the thing is, inside this temple, there's a lack of a sarcophagus, lack of a body. This is a sacred space. Initiates will come into this temple to transcend space and time, right? And that makes more sense when you think about Africans in sacred space. Anybody that's been to West Africa and did more than just go on the tours knows that they create sacred temple spaces in different areas and so on and so forth. But I'm off task. I just wanted to show the Pyramid of Unas because I'm recognizing my presentation is all words, and so it's going to need something more than just words in order to capture the audience. But, I think that's what we'll do is we'll break down the Temple of Unas in a later presentation, right? But let me get back to what I was doing before. Hold on a second. Boom. All right. So, like I was saying before, the entrance of the pyramids is of Unas is low, what you saw, right? And then they say it served as a guide for the deceased king's soul. And it was designed to protect the inner sanctum from intruders. This is what they're saying. We could also interpret it as the mind, the subconscious going into the inner recesses of, the inner recesses of self, right? The pyramid and the internal structures are aligned with specific stars. The Egyptians viewed the stars as deities guiding the king's afterlife journey. The pyramid served as a spiritual launching pad for the soul, and it illustrates the integration of astronomy, astrology, and religious spiritual beliefs. So, we know that the ancient Egyptians had a connection to the stars, but was it like the astrological connection that we know of today? That's to be seen. But we definitely know that there was definitely a connection that they had to the stars, and that you were judged by the star under which you were born, because they had this deacon system that is how they measured the year. I can't say judge, maybe that's off, but they definitely had a system for which they measured the year based upon the stars. Now, pyramid walls were inscribed with the literature and the text protect and guide the king in his journey through the afterlife. Our help is kind of like if you've ever been to a past life regression or to hypnotherapy session, and the hypnotherapist is guiding you through the trance, guiding you through a past life or guiding you through a life regression session. That's what it's like. And the physical passage mirrors the spiritual and the magical journey described in the text. All right, boom, boom, boom. Don't need to go over that. Now, the pyramid of Unas was the design for later pyramids. So it was the pyramid of Unas really that set the precedent. So the other pyramid builders, so Kashekemwe, Jedfre, Khafre, Merinra, the Giza Khufu, the Giza pyramids, you're not going to find pyramids inside the Giza plateau. That's when they were learning, right? That's when that's when they were learning how to build the pyramids, right? And then Khufu learned from his father Jedfre, and then Merinre learned from Khufu, right? And then but because they were learning how to construct the pyramids, at this time the idea did not come to them to put the text, their spiritual literature inside their pyramids. That didn't happen until the fifth dynasty, the end of the fourth dynasty, right? And so we can see the progression of this technology, so to speak, or of this part of their civilization, and then this will answer the question. This also helps to answer the question when people start saying, did the pyramids just pop out of nowhere? No, it was a slow, gradual process of mistakes, learning, incorporation, innovation, because cats is like, I'm building this pyramid for eternity. Let's put our sacred literature down. That's essentially what happened. They didn't make up their spirituality in the fifth and fourth dynasties. You know what I'm saying? They just the very names of the rulers, the very names of the people reflect their spirituality. Ka Shekemwe, the power of the power of the spirit. One infused with spiritual power. That's what Ka Shekemwe means. Ka Shekemwe was one of the rulers of ancient Egypt, right? And so, this conversation people are having, that Kemetic spirituality emerged with the coffin text, or you can only practice funerary rituals when a relationship to Kemetic spirituality is a false narrative. What you have in the coffin text is a specific way in which they're outlining their belief system, but it's not just solely, associated or relegated to the coffin or funerary text, right? So the sarcophagus chamber symbolizes the underworld, where the king begins his afterlife journey, and houses the granite sarcophagus, chosen for its durability and its permanence. No doubt. Kerma is definitely important. Dr. Moada Ashby's, there's a sister named Ashby, Dr. Solange Ashby. She got her degree studying Ethiopian Nubian spirituality. So I need to go ahead and really just break down her dissertation as well. This is somebody else's dissertation I'm really going through right now. Really, this is my breakdown of a dissertation on the pyramid text, right? And so I'm just going to go chapter by chapter, breaking it down, and how the pyramid texts are outlining a spiritual initiation and becoming an Ak, or a realized and enlightened being, right? So we saw that the ceiling is made up of stars, and stars represented enlightened beings in ancient Kemet, right? And then it aligns the kings or the initiate with the stars as the eternal dwelling place of the gods. And then also the stars acted as navigation tools for the king's celestial journey. So let's go ahead and look at that pyramid again, so you can see what it was talking about. See, when it says the ceiling, when it said the ceiling was aligned, was with stars, that's what it's talking about. So when you're inside Kemetic, when you're inside ancient Egypt, right? When you go to Egypt or whatever, and you go to their temples and you see the temples aligned with stars, understand that in the Kemetic mind, the stars are the enlightened ancestors, are spiritual beings, right? That are guiding humanity. And in one sense, that could be spooky, you know what I'm saying, and mystical in one sense. In another sense, they are stars. They are guiding humanity, right? The alignment of the stars will tell you what time of the year it is, when it's gonna flood, what season it is. In one sense of the word, the stars definitely guide humanity. So that's, yes, the stars definitely influence life. So that's a very interesting perspective. Now, let me get back to sharing the other joint really fast here. All right. So the king's journey in the afterlife mirrors the sun movement in the bark of millions of years. It ensures the initiate. Whenever you see king, I'm going to say initiate. The initiate safe passage through the night sky. And then it reinforces the understanding in cosmic renewal and eternal life. Now there's the antechamber, right? And that was a transitional space. And I got to go through that. And that served as a threshold between life and death. And it's located between the outside world and the sarcophagus chamber. And it decorated with pyramid texts offering protection and guidance for the king. Certain texts in the pyramid, certain pyramid texts were placed in certain spaces. There are certain pyramid texts that are around certain doors. There are certain pyramid texts that are inside the passageway, the causeway. There's certain texts that's read in a certain way. There's certain texts that start the purification. There's certain texts that start with wearing white. They discuss wearing white and purifying yourself before you enter into this ritual space. Right? This is how you know, or this is one of the ways you can tell that this was an initiationary type of space, because this isn't going to be in this presentation, but it's going to be later where I'm going to make the case, or where I'm going to show you where the case is made, that as you start this ceremony, you light incense, you light a candle, and you purify yourself. Anybody who's been through initiation knows that's what you do when you sit down and you perform any type of meditation, any type of ritual. You create sacred space. So the pyramid text, when you enter in that thing, is talking about creating a sacred space before you enter into trance and become a Sar. So the symbolism of the antechamber represents the transition from earthly existence to the divine world, so on and so forth, and ensures the king's purification and preparation for the afterlife. Right? Boom, boom, boom. I already went through this. So we're now talking about the strategic placement of the glyphs. The hieroglyphic inscriptions, they line the corridors and the chamber of the pyramid. Right? It serves the ceremonial functions and is placed strategically inside the pyramids. The corridors contain protective text to guard the king's passage, right? And it's designed to ward off evil spirits and misfortune. So when it says the corridors, it's that small space leading into the bigger chamber, coming down from the passageway. The most sacred inscriptions are placed inside the sarcophagus chamber, and they contain complex spells and prayers for the king's rebirth, or for the initiate's rebirth into the divine essence. And then it transforms the chamber into a divine world for a celestial ascension. Now, the ancient Kemites, the Egyptians, believed written words possessed magical powers. Right? Priests and the kings could activate the magic by reading the text aloud, or could initiate the transformation, initiate the procedure. Right? And then in certain practices, we know that you draw certain symbols and you sing certain songs in order to manifest certain energies. I'm gonna say it like that because of whatever. But there's a certain teaching that teaches the transmission of Egyptian rituals from ancient times to the present through certain organizations that kept it under wraps, kept it in the esoteric tradition, right? And we can see this, and it even made its way into diasporic African philosophy. We can see that as well. I'm not going to get into that, but in maybe another time, another build. So inscriptions functioned as ritual. Well, and then there's a question in the chat: why do they need to be guarded? Everybody needs to be guarded, especially when you're in your spiritual body. You're just open to everything that's out there. In the physical body, you have kind of a barrier, but when you're in the spirit realm, you're open to a lot of spiritual entities, right? And there's all sorts of spiritual entities out there. And so protection is one of the things that is very key in most spiritual rituals. So inscriptions function as ritual guides for priests, and then it helped the king to overcome obstacles in the afterlife, right? So, and it also ensured the king's eternal protection and ascension. Now, I'm not going to get into that. Okay. The sarcophagus chamber is located at, wow, I really do need pictures here. It took me so long putting this together, and I don't have any pictures. I really am going to have to put some pictures in this joint. All right. But I would do that later. I know that that's what needs to be done. The sarcophagus chamber is located at the heart of the pyramid, and it's one of the most sacred spaces. It houses the king's sarcophagus made from granite or basalt. And then it is adorned with intricate carvings and hieroglyphic text. So there's magical and protective inscriptions, right? The walls inscribed with the pyramid text designed for protection, transformation. Hieroglyphs serve key functions, right? They can be spells for protection, guidance text, ritual instructions, and affirmations of status, right? Those are the main functions of the pyramid text: protection, guidance, instruction, and affirmation, right? The spells for protections, they were designed to shield the king from malevolent forces. It invokes the gods Osar, I need to change that to Osar, Anpu, and Ra as divine protectors. And it ensures the king's peace and security in the afterlife, right? The text for ritual instructions, it helps the initiate navigate the underworld, navigate the Jawat. And it details the challenges that the initiate has to overcome to achieve immortality, right? The opening of the mouth ceremony. The interesting thing about the opening of the mouth ceremony, and I kind of think this theory is really key as well, is that it mimics the birthing ceremony in humans, where you have to open the mouth in order there's like a mucus film or something inside the baby's mouth when it is born, and you have to clear out that mucus film in order for it to breathe. Or you have to open the mouth of the child, or as it's born in the physical world. At death, there's the opening of the mouth ceremony, mimicking the birthing ceremony, where you have to open the mouth of the deceased in order for him to live and to breathe in the afterlife. That's a theory. But the interesting thing is, when you look at the culture that went into the formation of ancient Kemet, the burial custom of the culture was to bury people in what's called the fetal position, right? And the fetal position seems to be mimicking the fetal position that you're in when you're born. So as you are born, so you shall transition, right? So there seems to be a continuity of conception going on here. That's kind of what it appears to be when you're looking at these rituals. Anyway, the ceiling is adorned with, we already saw that, boom, boom, boom. I think I did this. Limestone. All right. So limestone was the basic material for the casing and the core. It was chosen because, it was a lot of it, basically. And it had both practical and symbolic functions, right? It was a symbol of light and purity. It reflects the sun rays. It links the pyramid to Ra and the king's divine rebirth. It's a purification symbolism. and prepares the burial complex as a worthy vessel for the king's spirit. Alabaster. So when you look at what's called the canopic jars, typically they're made of alabaster, and it's like representative of the moon. Alabaster is representative of the moon and the personality, and it glows like the moon, reflects the light of the sun. And it's supposed to represent the cycles of rebirth and its connection with Osiris and Asar, right? So materials play a central role in rebirth and purification, right? The opening of the Mount ceremony used symbolic materials to ensure the king's transformation. Limestone's bright, clean appearance was a physical manifestation of purification. Alabaster had a lunar and Assyrian associations, which were strengthened for rebirth, right? The choices ensured that the king's spiritual cleansing and successful afterlife. The pyramid was both a monument and a sacred space of transformation, right? Gotta understand, the pyramid was not a burial chamber, but it was a sacred space of spiritual transformation that was used as an initiation chamber. The burial pyramid is one, and we're talking about the temple complex associated with the burial pyramid. I see I did a lot of... I already did this. Resurrection spells concentrated in the sarcophagus chamber. And it focuses on the king's revival and transformation into a deity. So when you get resurrected, you get transformed into a deity, right? It's to invoke Asar and the other gods. Offering spells, so to speak. The magical functions of the pyramid text, right? So the pyramid text is rooted in the concept of Heka. Heka is like the Indian mantras, divine magic, right? It's words and rituals to activate the magical power of text, right? There are three key functions in pyramid text magic, right? It's protective, divine assistance, and eternal life. So protection for divine assistance into eternal life. That's what the function of Heka, our magic, was in ancient Egypt, right? And then the ultimate goal was to transcend death and achieve immortality, right? So the power of Heka is harnessed to seal a person's place among the gods. So through the use of Heka, through the use of mantra, you can increase your spiritual power, right? This is what, if you study Indian mantra, if you study Eastern mythology, a lot of modern day Kemetic teachers mix in Eastern Indian mythology with Egyptian mythology because they see it as being the same. And then in later periods, maybe at another point, I'll break down the Egyptian origin of Gnosticism, and then show how that there was a practice of invoking the planetary powers, or the archangel deities within the self, in order to manifest them, right? But then that power, that same concept of invoking the archangel deities within the self, is also practiced in India, right? You use mantra to invoke a specific energy within the self, and so we can also see the same concept, although not specifically stated so far that I found in Kemetic text, but we see the same concept here, as Heka is used to increase the initiate's spiritual power, to put the initiates as one amongst the gods, right? That's what it is, right? And see, Heka is designed to transform the king from a mortal person to a divine person. Mantra is used to transform you. Mantra is used to transform. I don't know about that one, Zoroastrianism. I haven't studied Zoroastrianism that hard. Mantra is used to transform the individual from a mortal to an immortal, so to speak. And then for here, transformation is achieved through the recitation of text, right? Boom, boom, boom. Pyramid text, guidance in the afterlife. Text aligned with Asar. and to ensure the king's rebirth and eternal life, right? Continuous rituals to be performed by the priests, ensure the kings receive or the initiate receive sustenance and support in the afterlife. So there's an intimate connection between the acts done on earth and what happens in the afterlife. You know, it's different. That's kind of the difference between, like, or one difference between Kemetic spirituality and Indian spirituality, or at least some aspects of Indian spirituality. Because in some of the teachings of Indian spirituality, they teach a cutoff with the ancestral realm, so to speak. It's almost like a crapshoot or a shooter of the die or whatever. You know, like I'm not aware of any Indian practices that really venerate the ancestors. But we know when I say ancestral veneration, that's all African. That's just straight up African. There should be no question that that's an African practice. So there's a difference there in this practices, but that's just approach, you know. So that's just approach. Boom, boom, boom. So the texts are meticulously organized, right? Different sections contain specific groups, and different sections reflect the stages of the king's afterlife. So, you know, this is and you know, I understand this might be a little tedious, but it's really kind of trying to understand what the pyramid texts are. So I'm okay with that. I can make cartoons. Any of my cartoons are a little tedious, but I have not heard of the funerary text, the Susa. I'll definitely put that on my study agenda. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Hold a second. The Susa funerary text. I'll check it out. Thanks for that. But yeah, they're arranged in a specific way. And so we're gonna look at that later. Like I said, it's not gonna be in this presentation per se. I only go through like I show one text in this presentation and I mention two others. Really, this is just a beginning start of an analysis of the pyramid text. This is more like a series, might be a 2 or 3 video series, might be like 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours. 3 to 5 hours. Let me stop playing around. All right. The entrance and the corridors contain protective spells and guidance, and it prepares for the initial states, right? So what are we talking about? Let's go back to the scene, right? So when it says the entrance contains protective spells, they're talking about this space here. All of this is protective spells. Everything on the wall here is a protective spell, right? In order to help guide you and get you ready for the afterlife. I'm trying to read it right now. It's not really that bad. This is a biliteral. This is mer. This is meri. I don't know this biliteral here. This is sa. This is tep. Tep sa. I don't know this one here off the top. These two. Tep sa tech. Ir. Tep. Unas. Hetep im. I don't know this one here. Shechem. Hetep im Shechem, I think. But yeah, the priest would read it, yes, but the participants as well. Essentially, what I'm getting at here is that these spaces were initiation temples, where like in ancient times, like if we just look at the cultures that were influenced by ancient Kemet, they had initiatory rites that people would go through at certain times of the year. And so to think that Egypt didn't have initiatory rites that people went through at a certain time of the year, it doesn't connect. Like Egypt would be the only one that didn't do it. The only thing is the problem that Egypt was the documentation piece. Kemet had horrible documentation skills in reference to like, how much of what it document of its civilization it documented. It had a lot of documents, but it could have been better, and so then that much we just don't know. They didn't explicitly say these are rites that are to be performed in the springtime and this is the purpose. That it's not explicitly stated, it has to be inferred. All right. The antetaber purification prepares the king for his final journey and ensure that the king is cleansed and worthy to proceed. Right. The sarcophagus chamber. I think I said this. All right. So let's look at interpretation and thematic connections, right? So scholars analyze text through ritualistic and thematic connections. Peace, peace, everybody. The sequence of the text mirrors the king's journey from death to rebirth. Linguistic studies decode metaphysical concepts and cosmic integration, right? So here's the debate on the text. Were the texts solely for the king's use in the afterlife, or did they serve a broader ceremonial purposes for the living? I'm making this argument that the text was not just for the king, but because of the way in which the temple was aligned, it was for ceremonial purposes for the living. So, and then as the people would go through different portions of the chamber and sing these different songs or speak these different words, they would take the initiates through a trance-like state where then when you're in a deep enough state of trance, it feels like the body is dead, so to speak, and and then you access another aspect of self. Anybody who's entered into deep meditation, been into any African ritual where they went into trance can attest to that conscious state of being, or that altered state of consciousness. So the evolution of funerary practices. This is this scholarly debate, right? The texts reflect the evolution of funerary practices. Different pyramids and dynasties show shift in the theological focus, and they reveal the changing role of the king in society and religion, right? There's two primary theories on what the pyramid texts are. There's a linear progression and then thematic clustering, right? Mine is what I'm going to talk about. The one I adhere to really is the thematic clustering part. Yes, this is initiations that the people, that the community goes through while people are living. Now, these are the pyramid texts. So the text served as initiation centers. The pyramid, the temple complex, not the pyramid itself, but the temple associated with. Okay, like I said before, let's go through the temple itself again. The temple itself served as an initiation procedure that people would go through in trance-like state. There's a way in which, if you've been initiated in an African tradition, you know that you go to a sacred space, right? If you were in Isheshe, if you're in an Ifa tradition in Nigeria, there are certain, if you get initiated into a certain Orisha, there's a certain sacred space that's associated with Yemaya. There's a Yemaya forest, there's a Yemaya lake, right? There's the priests and priestesses of Yemaya, or Ogun, or Shango, right? And you would go there and you get initiated into that energy. It's the same concept because these are Africans creating this sacred space. But this is, at this time, they're creating a sacred space almost for eternity, so to speak. And initiates would come through this sacred space, get divine protection. If you've ever been in an African ritual, if you've ever been in an indigenous ceremony, one of the first things they do is sage you down. Why do they sage you down? They sage you down because they need divine protection, right? It's the same concept, just in literary form. At least this is my take on it. This is what I'm kind of grappling with and trying to understand it. So let me go back to the presentation. Boom, boom, boom. What's up, Shiva? Peace, peace. Yeah, I'm just going through a presentation that I got together, and then I'm doing a class later, so I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to make it better, basically. But also just go through it. I put it down to go through it and see what I need to correct and stuff. So I'm just up here, yeah. Also, this is for brothers and sisters that want to get a better understanding of what the pyramid texts are. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times, well, nobody really talks about it. There's really nowhere to go that talks about the pyramid text. And if there is, I haven't seen it. So here it is. All right. So this is what's called the linear progression theory, right? This says that the pyramid text is a logical sequence mirroring the king's afterlife journey, right? The entrance is death. The corridors is the underworld journey. And the sarcophagus chamber is the resurrection of the rebirth, right? And the pyramid texts, they act as a map or a guide for the initiate in their path to immortality, right? Then you have the theme. This is the one that I'm kind of going to argue for later on and show you that the texts go from, like I said earlier, from protection, purification, identification, resurrection, and rebirth, right? So, and that's essentially what the cluster theory is. It's not a cluster F, it's just a cluster theory. All right. Now, people want to say, and you'll hear people come up against the Kemetic view and saying that the pyramid texts are for funerals only, and that's not correct because the texts themselves incorporate Kemetic spiritual, religious, cultural understanding. The Aket. An Ak, right? Some people say an Asar. An Asar is what you were to become when you died, right? But an Ak is something that you became while you were living. An Ak is an enlightened being. An Ak is an upright, just, and moral person, right? It's something that we all look for somebody to be. Whenever we're critiquing somebody that's supposed to stand for something, that's because internally we see them as somebody who should be a moral role model for us to look up to. They should be someone who defends and helps the community grow. And that concept was codified in ancient Egypt by, saying you could become an Ak, a living soul, right? And so, and then that's a realized living soul. That's a person who's manifested above their lower self desires and then is a just and righteous person, right? That's what you became when you were alive. And when you died, you became an Aku, one amongst the living soul, an effective being, right? And we call them Sheps, our ancestors, right? In the modern day West African tradition, right? But not just any ancestors, you have ancestors that are called the dark deceased ancestors, right? The dark deceased ancestors are those people who pass away, but they're still drug addicts, they're still alcoholics, they're still, anger mongers or whatever, right? They don't have the wisdom to guide their descendants. They never gained wisdom in this life, so they don't have wisdom in the afterlife. You understand? Ancestors, when we call upon our ancestors, we're really calling upon those beings that had wisdom in this life to use their wisdom to guide us in this life. And anyway, that's what an Aku is, right? All right, so contemporary view, the texts serve broader mystical and cosmological functions. It's not just practical, but expressions of, let me hide this, divine existence. All right. I can skip over this. Now, I do agree with this, that scholars use, Sister Queen, what's up? Hey, peace, sister, peace. So scholars use the coffin text and the Book of Dead to interpret pyramid text. That's good and bad for two reasons. It's good because it shows you. So the argument that the pyramid text is only for the king falls apart when we recognize that the same text can be found in the coffin text, which was for the common people, and then the Pert Imheru, which was for everybody. We can find the same text being used, which is telling us that this was a cultural phenomenon, that everybody had access to the divine life, right? It's not that the king, it was only for the king, but we can also see that in Kemetic society, this is what I'm learning. A strong king is what, it's only because of strong kings that we even talk about Kemetic society now. If it wasn't for strong kings, leading strong kings and queens, I gotta put that out there. If it wasn't for strong brothers and sisters, strong kings and queens leading Kemetic society, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? And so then there was a lot of emphasis put on having a strong ruler, right, in the pyramid text. But over the course of time, it changed. So it's not like religious concepts evolved or changed. It's just different aspects was focused on. All right, the pyramid texts currently they're studied in fragments, and it can lose the broader theme. And if you study it in fragments, you're just going to not understand what's going on. It's not going to make sense. All right, boom, boom, boom. Placement within the pyramid is deliberate. It's not haphazard. So when you're looking at a pyramid text, understand that it's deliberate. Like we said before, the entrance is always about protection. All right, the focus on the original. We have to, and so at some point, I'm gonna definitely get back to teach. I might even do it after this. Maybe I'll do a hieroglyphs class tonight, and we'll focus on decoding some of the hieroglyphs just a little at a time. I gave out. If you, I could, it's the, all right. All right, is this better?
There you go.
Yeah, I had to get rid of the headphones.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. And so yeah, maybe a little bit later we'll study it together but anyway, let me just keep moving because I definitely have a long ways to go. All right. Comparing the pyramid text with contemporary or slightly later texts, it avoids reliance on text written centuries later, reducing anachronisms, and it allows for a more precise understanding of the religious evolution. So like I said, this discussion is going to primarily, not in this one, it's going to be in another presentation I do maybe next week. You're going to be primarily looking at the pyramid of Unas, one of the first ones. And there are certain utterances that were critical to the king's journey. And these are pyramid, and I need to go ahead and I did do 600, but I didn't do the rest. 213, 472, and 600. Now, also, we gotta these designations, pyramid utterance 213, utterance 472, that's a Western conception. It was read as a whole back then. This is just so when the West started studying it, this is how they divided it up. All right. So utterance 213, it's in the corridor walls, and it invokes divine protection for the king in the underworld. And then it ensures the king safely navigates the perils of the afterlife. Or another way to say that is utterance 213 invokes divine protection as you are going through initiation. Anybody going through an initiation knows one of the first things you go through is a purification ritual, and that you get divine protection put around you, so because you're open at this time. Energies are open to you, so you get this divine protection, right? And then you're given tools to help you overcome the different obstacles along the journey, right? And then utterance 472, after you get divine protection, you go, purification and divine protection kind of simultaneous, right? In modern spiritual practices. But the utterance 472 is found in the burial chamber, right? And it facilitates a cleansing process, and it removes all earthly taints, or lower aspects, lower inimical energy, so to speak. And it reinforces the transition from earthly existence to sacred divinity. I gotta let you, I had to. I'm gonna have to make this statement. This is kind of just a serious presentation. So I hope if y'all here for just the listening lecture portion, I hope you are, and appreciate your presence definitely. All right, utterance 600 it's located in the upper sections of the burial chamber and associated with depictions of the starry sky, right? And it describes the transformation into a star, a Seba. Seba is the interesting thing about the Kemetic language too, is like the different associations, right? A star is also called a Seba, and a Seba is also called a teacher, a guide, right? So we can see the connections here. We'll get into that later when we really kind of delve into the language. So, but then also that means stars are Sebas, Sebas are guides, stars guide the world. Stars also guide human destiny. Stars are teachers. That's kind of the philosophy, the rhetoric inside this theology, right? The placement of utterances is intentional and reflects transitions, right? Protection spells safeguard the journey. Purification spells prepare you for divine encounters. And ascension text represents the transformation into a divine being. All right. The symbolic alignment of text and space, right? The architecture of the pyramid functions as a sacred guide, right? So anybody who's been in any ritual, if you've ever been in a ritual, if you've been in the African ritual, even my Native American brothers, man, if you ever really took it to the limit, really, not even to the limit, like just took it beyond talk, if and actually visited the true native spaces where they're holding sacred space, you know that the creation of sacred space involves creating the sacred space. You gather together materials that have symbolic meaning, and you place them in a symbolic way. The directions have symbolic meaning. The west means something symbolic. North is symbolic. South is symbolic. East is symbolic. You know what I'm saying? Up is symbolic. Down is symbolic. All has symbol, and this symbol creates a sacred space. This is in the Native American tradition, right? You know that circles and cycles are important inside the Native American tradition. The creation of sacred space. Indigenous melanated people consistently created sacred space. And so it doesn't make sense to think that these are haphazard, random texts. These texts in an indigenous melanated space is there to create sacred space, right? So the pyramid text reinforces the idea, the conception that the pyramid is a ritualistic ceremonial chamber, right? Boom, 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 boom. I already did this. I keep doing stuff over. All right. There's frequent references to stars and celestial cycles. The starry ceiling suggests a celestial transformation, your transformation into a star, into a Seba, into a teacher, into a guide, into an Aku, an Ak. Like the goal, it's not African spirituality, Kemetic spirituality is not just about being someone knowledgeable, but it's not about being deep. It's about being effective in the maintenance of ma'at inside your personal, familial, communal, societal life. Like you have to be an ak in all of those areas of life. You have to be an ak in your personal life and overcome your personal ills. You have to be an enlightened being. You have to be an effective one inside your personal life. Like if you're on drugs, if you're got any type of addictions, if you have any type of behavior that causes disruptions in your own ability to manifest greatness in your own personal life, you need to eliminate that and become an ak and an effective one at being effective in your personal life. You have to be effective in your family life. It's not about leaving your family to become an enlightened being. It's about being enlightened in your family and then helping your family grow with your enlightenment. right? And then are you an effective Ak in your community? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you moving your community towards peace and balance? You know what I'm saying? As we are, as we are young, as we are able, as we are willing, we need to make sure that we're establishing peace and balance in our community. And we have to also be concerned about the nation, because all of this is interrelated. The nation, what happens on the national level affects the local level, affects the personal level. Like, you have to be effective throughout all levels, right? And you have to do so in a balanced way. You have to make sure you put time into each of those. Whatever you water grows. You know what I'm saying? So you have to water the spiritual. You have to nurture your spiritual aspects, so your moral, ethical being. You have to nurture your family. You have to nurture your community. You have to nurture your nation state, so on and so forth. You have to be there, and that's what an Aku was. That's what a Sheps is. That's what an ancestor becomes. Our ancestor is blah, blah, blah. Well, I just... All right. Has ritual texts. They were recited at temple ceremonies, used in coronation and said festivals, and then may have been read aloud at the death, right? Has cosmological text. Pyramid text explains the integration into the divine order. The celestial imagery and ascension spells connect to the stars. What's up, sister? Peace, peace. It reveals Kemetic ideas of creation, the gods, and the structures of the universe, right? Now, the pyramid texts activate Heka. So when we look at Heka, remember, Heka is magic, so to speak, our mantra, right? And the idea is that mantra activates certain energies inside the universe, right? And then those energies can be activated within the self to assist one in becoming a divine being, right? And so when you activate Heka, the idea of activating Heka is to make, in the Kemetic conception, is to make one like the gods, right? This is the activation. Can we find those inscriptions and read them? Yeah. Hold on a second. So if you want to read them, hold a second. This is a transliterated version of what I'm showing you here by Faulkner. It's called the Egyptian Pyramid Text. This is in English, so you'll be able to read these. The online versions is kind of hard to. Not everybody can read them. I mean, that's just one thing. Things are on its way. But anyway, spoken words had power to protect.
Don't say everybody can read that or comprehend, because when I was reading Tantra or in doing English translations, people they was confused. It was very basic.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, what I'm saying is, people become better as time goes on. People get motivated to study a portion of something, but may not be, well versed in all of it. And then it's about learning more. So if you don't have access to knowing how to read the glyphs, find out how to read the glyphs. That's what I say. If that's important. To some people, it's not important, and even some systems, it's not important. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. In some systems, learning to read the glyphs is not important, but it was important to me. So I did learn. I'm brushing up on it again. There's certain construction of sentences and adverbial clauses and all that stuff. I'm brushing up on. Anyway. All right. Some inscriptions are fragmented. Understanding pronunciation and meaning is difficult. Conclude. All right. The resurrection, right? The found in the burial chamber ensures the king is not trapped in death, but reborn as a god, right? So inside the burial chamber, you're going to find texts that deal with awakening, reuniting the Ba with the Shechem or the Ka. so to speak. Shechem, I said Shekelum. I made a mistake there. But so here's an understanding. The Ba would be like that consciousness that keeps your heart beating, right? That consciousness that keeps your heart beating and understands that when you breathe in air, what part of that air is oxygen, what part of that air is nitrogen, what part of that air is gases that's toxic for you. And then it separates that out, right? That's that part of ourself that we don't have to talk about. It's usually called the unconscious mind, right? But it's also your spirit. It's that Ba part of you, right? It's a part of the universal essence, but it's your personal portion, right? It's your personal portion of the divine essence that you have to nurture, right? It's always going to be working, but its working or its function is going to be either heightened or limited due to your understanding of its operation in your life, right? That's the Ba. It's going to operate. It's going to move your heart energy. But if you're constantly eating unhealthy food, it's going to have blockages, right? And it's going to manifest in unhealthy, it's going to manifest in health issues, right? So anyway, when we're talking, that's what the Ba is, so to speak. And the Shechem, it said it is Ka, but when you're dealing with life force is Shechem, right? Or you have to merge but it's saying your Ka is your personality. You have to merge the two. When you can merge your consciousness and your subconscious together, that's when you become an Akor Nasar divine being, right? That's when you become the manifestation of a God vessel on earth, male or female. That's when you become a God being on earth, right? And that's when you take your throne alongside Asar, because you have manifested, you have joined, you have merged your divine essence and your personality essence on the earth into one being, right? Look like a question.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm just saying. Oh, I got it. See, you know me, when I talk about spiritual stuff, I dumb it down to like kindergarten, second grade level, basic, so people can understand. You go over people's head because you're like fifth grade, eighth grade level, because you decode that shit. You break it all the way down, but it still go over people's heads. And I said, how it go? You know me, I'm complex. But now I really got it. Like, oh, you're just like fifth grade, eighth grade level. Like, you know what I mean? People ain't care.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm not an effective person if I'm going over people's heads, so I gotta watch that. I gotta be able to explain it better.
You heard what I said, right? But
I do hear you. I hear you.
I go over people's heads, but I would dumb it. That's what I said. I would just decode it. If I was thinking about telling my kids about spirituality, I got 7 to 14-year-old. I was telling them since they came out of my body. But you know what I mean? So I just know how to break it down for a child's level. But how far you at, you shouldn't go to my level. Pre-K, bro. No.
Okay. All right. I'll take that.
You're good.
I'll take that.
But now I understand, because I told you people go over their heads with me, but I'm not that witty with my words anymore. You know what I mean, right? And then especially my vocabulary, and I'm breaking it down to an elementary level, a kindergarten level. I'm not saying anything extraordinary. I'm not going to say anything that how hood folks saying big words.
Fair enough.
I appreciate you, bro. I totally understand everything. Only because, we practice the same thing.
Right.
It reaffirms it was teaching me again through my initiation. You know what I mean? You was right. Every time I messed up, the protection was there. Feel me? Even when I was probably about to go to jail again, prison, protection didn't allow me to go to jail. I was like, what the heck? I wanted to go to prison, my nigga. Real talk. Like, you
literally breaking down step by step where you need to go, right? But a lot of these folks, they have an issue. They like metaphors and fantasies.
Metaphors and
They rather listen to that. That's why they love the Bible. That's why they love certain Orisha's stories than what you just said.
yeah.
You basically just said what the stories. You literally just broke it down. Just step by step.
Yeah, that consciousness is it's worldwide, tell you the truth. So all right, let me get through this.
Keep going.
Yeah. So this utterance right here is what this is kind of letting you know, like, how do you take this one? It says, Unas is not dead. Unas is not perished. Unas has become a living God, right? So this one right here is telling you that this is talking about divine rebirth. Now, in the esoteric metaphysical world, there's an idea that when you transcend physical life, you lose consciousness and you can lose all aspects of self, right? But if you engage in ethical and moral practices while alive, as well as a lot of spiritual initiations, is really just right living and conscious and being conscientious of your work, but then also engaging in ritual and meditation, mindfulness, so to speak. If you're engaged in mindfulness for the most part, you can transcend a lot of the emotions of the lower self. And then that's how you don't get your soul eating by Baba the Soul Eater and lose consciousness and then go off into a state where you have to be reborn again to experience karma all over. But you can become an effective being or an asar after death, and then become an ancestor that helps guide your descendants. All right. And so ritualistically,
questions.
Oh yeah, go ahead, family. I don't even remember what I said, family.
Wonder I wonder if you go back what you just said. You said say they giving you the song. Say they give it to you, but no excuse why you didn't maintain it and nourish it, but some reason you didn't, and they took it away.
Well, no one can take it or give. You are the one that takes your status away. You know that. You take your you take your own status away by giving into the lower self or not being an effective one. You are the one that takes your status away. You know, by giving into sloth, by giving into laziness, by not adhering to your practice, your discipline. Peace, family. You're the one that takes your status of a Asar away, or your status of an Ak, you know, by being someone who's not taking care of their family, not taking care of their responsibilities, however that looks. You know, in today's day and age, you know, we got to deal with all sorts of complex relationships, but you need to still be there for your family in some shape, form, or fashion. You know, if you can. Sometimes our family is toxic, and so we have to figure out how to have a healthy relationship with them. You know, it's not about always being there for them. It's not about being used by them, but it's not about completely forgetting them either. Your mother is always going to be your mother. Your brother is always going to be your brother. You might not get along with them. You know what I'm saying? You might not vibe with them, but they're always going to be there. And so you got to somehow figure out, and it might just be by being an example from a distance, you know, until they're ready to kind of understand what you were talking about. But you have to be there for your family and your community.
So when you get back to the SAR, you can just go to them in silence, and that happen automatically. The SAR take care of it.
Right. You don't even have to say anything, because what's going to end up happening is your family's going to be like, you know what? You were talking about all that health stuff back in the day. I wasn't even listening to you, but now I hear what you're saying. That's the way it goes. You don't have to push it down their throat. You just be the example of divine living in front of them. Let them persecute you first, because that's the way it goes. They always persecute you first, and then later on they see that you had something going on. So, yeah. But it's up to you to maintain, who you are and your righteousness on that path.
They're going to destroy you.
Brother Guy, first you were saying something?
I was saying, yeah, when you connected with the system, I started to realize just that everybody around you, even your family members that are not on the same path that you are on, that's that pushback I see you talking about. That's that criticism. That's that thinking, that critical thinking that they have to think that what your path is wrong. That's why I stayed into the teachings of Ma'at. That's why I think Ma'at is important. Because the other part of this is that I feel like the whole teachings of Ma'at teaches us this. Forget just the laws, just the beginning to the end. It's the righteousness, the truth, and the justice all in one. I think that overrules any other book or story or aspect that you can come up with to say that to just try to say that it's not the correct way is crazy, brother. It's crazy to me.
It, when you look. No, go ahead, brother. I you didn't completely land. Apologies.
Yeah, that's why when I look at this, the system in itself, and when I say the system, people, I'm talking about the spirituality system that we're talking about. I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect because even if you have missing information, it's still there, and we're finding it, and we're digging into it, and it's a beautiful system. Yeah, and that's why I think that it'll never be erased from history ever.
It's tapped into the eternal. That's why. You know what I'm saying? It goes cross-cultural, cross-time and space. But and that's one of the things. That's one of the reasons why I think. Let me move past this. All right. So the ascension and the union with the gods, right? The themes are rising to the stars to join Ra's, solar boat, becoming a god that sits amongst, the gods, right? And that's the imperishable stars, becoming an immortal divine being. Now, this is utterance 600. I am a star, the companion of Ra, right? So this is also telling you that you can become the divine essence, right? You can become a godlike being, so to speak, right? This is a breakdown of the pyramid text 600. All right. So the rituals, it reflects the temple ceremonies where kings were deified in life, right? So now if we also understand this, the temple, not the pyramid, but the temple, to be a place of initiation, if you just replace that word with king, with initiates were deified in life. Because another thing that was common in ancient Egypt is every city had an Ak, or an effective being, or somebody who's been through initiation, right? Initiation is key here, or initiating you into dying and rising again, or a dying and rising God, right? In my studies for this, like I was looking at some of the Dionysic rites, right? That were like a year that were a year long, right? And it began in the fall with where things began to die, right? And then culminated in the spring with the rising of the God self, right? And these were rites that you went through. And the death was during winter when the world dies. So they use the seasons as initiation portals, and then symbolic initiation portals to help you become a divine being. And this was an initiation you went through each year. That was in the Dionysic rites that I was looking at. But then, like I said, it doesn't make sense that Dionysus is known as a Tsar, but these similar rites are not in Egypt or Kemet. So boom, boom, boom. I said this. So, all right. So we can look at James P. That's pretty much it now. That's the presentation. These are some of the text that was used. All right. So that was that, family. Just understanding the pyramid, and then it's I'll do another one next week, in which I'll get together. Peace, Hatep Kimwe. In which I'll get together a breakdown or a look at other pyramid texts and ways in which they can be read that will show the initiation and the purification rite, and how at least an approach that it may be. Not saying it is, but at least approach that it could be.
I have to ask you this, brother. Wow.